Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of what I am tentatively calling Enjoy Every Sandwich. I am your host, Zach, and this is intended to be a mental health podcast. And so I'll stop right there because the first couple questions I would have are why another podcast and why mental health? Mental health is such a broad terminology that's used today. And so I'm happy to answer those questions that I'm sure all single digit listeners, watchers of you have. Um, so I have had this idea for quite a while, and it's been something that has been a struggle to start because I think when you want to do something, you want to make sure that you have a solid idea, not just something that people want to listen to continuously, but also something that inspires you to continue doing it. And so, for me, I have found that throughout my life, mental health has been a struggle, and it wasn't always something that I realized. It was something that I realized somewhat later on and in a really series of bizarre circumstances. So, the ability to talk about the things that I've been through and, sort of help people relate to maybe some things that they're going through. That was the genesis of the idea, and so subsequently, some things happened to me that just gave me a different perspective on life, and without trying to sound too happy about it, I just think that life is short and life is precious and life is important. And since we're here, we may as well, share our experiences to not only make our lives better, but the lives of others better. I mean, that's the hope anyway. So for me, this is intended to be a forum for people to share. And I'm certainly going to use it to share. I think talking has been something that has helped me a lot, and that's not something that I did a lot of when I was younger. And I think that my dog is over in the corner making a lot of noise, and so I think for me, if that helped me, I hope that it can help other people. And so, um, really, I want to be able to have a spot where I can talk to people that I know, talk to people that I don't know, and have them come on here and share their experiences, because I think it's really important to and maybe you want to do this with a therapist. I should say right off, I am not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm not trained in any sort of medical field. I'm just a human being, and the things that human beings go through sometimes can be really tough. And I think just having a place where you can work through your emotions, to get a different perspective. Maybe I'm looking at something in a really negative way or the wrong way, or maybe someone has gone through that same thing before, and this is the path that they took and it really helped them. That's really my intention here. And I'll give a little bit of a background. So really the name, right? The name Enjoy Every Sandwich, I cannot take credit for the term itself, but I can take credit for naming this podcast that. Enjoy Every Sandwich is a line. Of course, I think a lot of people, but if there aren't a lot of people that know, David Letterman was the host of a late night show for about 30 years, maybe more. And his favorite musician was a man named Warren Zevon. So Warren Zevon was kind of this, I wouldn't say underground, but not really, somebody that could fill out like Madison Square Garden per se. People knew who he was, but his stuff was definitely out there, like lyrically and musically. And so he was David Letterman's favorite musical artist. And so he would be on the show all the time. And the thing about Warren Zevon that we came to find out was that he didn't go to a doctor for like 25 years. And he developed this like persistent cough. And, he was on tour and he was like, it must be the flu. I'll push through it. and it never went away. He got it in like March, and by the time August or September or something rolled around, he said, "Okay, I better go to the doctor." And so he goes to the doctor, and of course, stage 5 lung cancer. And so, or stage 5, maybe stage 4, just inoperable. That's it. They can't really do anything for him except make him comfortable. And so, he continues to write, he continues to record, and he continues to go on David Letterman's show. So the last time he was on David Letterman's show, Letterman asked him something like, after experiencing all of these things, is there anything that you can share with us that maybe you learned, or something that someone would want to do differently, and or something that you would wish you had done differently? And he said, just how much I wish I had enjoyed every sandwich, or how much I should have enjoyed every sandwich. And that always stuck with me because it's a really, really great metaphor. You don't know when your last sandwich is going to be. You don't know when your last day here is going to be. And so that always stuck with me, despite the sort of negativity that I enjoyed subconsciously living my life through. And so, yeah, I guess that's sort of helped me push through to where I am now, because all of these things that I'm referring to, that have happened to me, put me here where I am right now. So, um, like, it started off really slowly, and really small for me. Some of the issues that I was having, my childhood, I have a lot, and I'll underline that. I have a lot of really, really good memories. But I also have a lot of memories that are just sort of like balls of confusion, and just, things that I don't understand still. Just sort of the best way I could describe it is an inability to process emotions and events that are happening to me. And I just I just have a series of those. I think about it, and all I feel is just like confusion and stuff. So that was sort of the underlying feeling of the first, probably 10 to 12 years of my life that I can remember, is just having that. And so that was where it started. And in high school is when, really, as you get older, of course, you start to experience things that adults start to experience. Um, in 2008 or 2009, right around the time that the market crashed, so many families lost their homes, and you know lost their jobs, and everything. And sadly, unfortunately, my family was one of them. I grew up living with sort of my extended family. It was my immediate family, as well as my grandmother and my aunt. And so I grew up in the same house with them, and it was a really great environment. But so after that happened, where my dad lost his job, we had to leave the house, and we sort of split up. And the place that we went to, it's like when you lose a job and you're trying to support a family of 5. You can't just get any job. I mean, any job would help you, but also it's sort of fruitless after a while. So we didn't have much of any income coming in. And so we ended up at these apartments, and 6 months goes by, after sort of not paying the mortgage. Now we sold the house. We couldn't sell the house because of the mortgage and everything. And so we sort of left the house empty, moved into some apartments. 6 months goes by, can't afford the apartments. But one of the interesting things that happened around that time was that banks often lost like the titles or the deeds to homes, and so they could never foreclose officially. So our house was still there. So we moved back into the house, and it was like moving back and forth a couple times in 1 year is a lot. Added on to the stress of just struggling to buy food and pay for things and stuff like that. So I think, looking back, I definitely just sort of rolled with the punches, because I wasn't really capable at that time of working through the things that I was feeling, or understanding what was going on too deeply. And so that was a big turning point in my life, because it sort of shaped, it did. It shaped the next 10 years. It shaped, where I am now, which is in California. Um, so, fast forward a year after that, and I had graduated college. College. No, actually, I did not graduate college. A little wishful thinking there. I graduated high school, and I was on my way to college, and my dad got a job in San Francisco, and so for reference, I grew up in Massachusetts, so clear across the country. And so that meant that I was going to college and the rest of my family was moving to California. And so I was already sort of dealing with like being apart from them, but certainly not, across the country. So I think you deal with that the way that, any kind of 18-year-old would, is through anger and, you know, uh, trying to be a victim, and just name any kind of like negative thing that, a teenager would do. That was me. I did it. And I don't look back too fondly on that time. But that sort of led to what I later found out were panic attacks. I'd start experiencing them sort of in random times. I could be laying in bed, I'd have one, walking to class, sitting in class. I went to a taping of Jerry Springer, had a panic attack, didn't know what was going on. And it really wasn't until later that I realized they were panic attacks. And just because you have panic attacks doesn't mean that you're capable of dealing with them. So it made me really, really paranoid. I became someone that spent a lot of time on WebMD and said, okay, well, I've got big toe pain. That means, I'm not going to make it through the end of the year, and stuff like that. But, these things start to creep in. And so you add this level of anxiety with the level of negativity that I had throughout my childhood, which I think is sort of was born into this weird thing that I had where I enjoyed making people angry because it made other people laugh, kind of thing. Um, it's definitely sick and twisted. I haven't thought much about it, but yeah, I think you know being sort of caustic and outrageous, making people laugh in that way, that kind of negativity can really seep in. It actually becomes a part of you more than you think it would. So you combine those two things together, and it was stuff like I didn't want to leave my dorm room, or I didn't want to get in the car. I couldn't look out the window as we were driving unless I was driving because it was too fast. Like I was suddenly afraid of going too fast. I crippling fear of flying. Um, and so when I flew, so after my first year of college, I decided that I would come to California with my family. And so it was the most miserable, experience flying, because every little bump, every little noise was, something that I couldn't handle. And so I got out here, and I thought I had a pretty good summer. But again, things start to creep in. And I tried to go back to school, and I couldn't make that work because my brain just wasn't focused on it. And I should say at this point, I had never had a job. My parents never pushed me to get a job. So obviously, you know, um, I just I really wasn't very self-sufficient, and I think that played a large part in it. And so, yeah, I just continued to struggle with these weird symptoms. Most notably was this this feeling that I had to use the bathroom constantly. Doesn't matter. I could go to the bathroom, and 2 seconds later, I would feel like I would have to go, like, worse than I did before. And it was all day long for about 6 months. And I went to doctors, and they did tests, and it was nothing. They gave me whatever, there's some sort of generic pill that they give people when they don't know what you have. Kills every infection. They gave me that thing, and that did nothing. And then when I started working, um, it just sort of gradually went away, and I realized that distracting myself, or having a purpose for getting up every morning, sort of put those weird thoughts in the back of my mind. So I started to work towards that. And, I started watching what I was eating, and I was trying to exercise a little bit more. And I think that helped. That helped set me on the right track. But the brain is an interesting thing because I would just have these weird panic attack, anxiety inducing, like just medical symptoms that were nothing. It was just me conjuring something up, to make myself, to freak myself out. And, these things just kept building and building and building. And so um, it got to the point where I could not really do anything. I was afraid. I was even afraid to go to the doctor. I was afraid um, to get in a car. I was just, it wasn't good. And um, of course, in my mind, I thought, well, it's just willpower, right? I mean, it's my own mind playing tricks on me. It's there's nothing that anyone else can do. I have to sort of overcome this on my own, and I kept trying to do that. And I would do it for a little while, but then it's almost like it would creep in worse after I did it. So it got to the point where I had made a dentist appointment, and I have this. I still don't like the dentist, okay, but I had this just intense fear of going, and I knew somebody that worked there, so she said that her dentist was really nice and all this stuff, and so I went, and it was fine. It was a cleaning, whatever. They said I had a couple cavities, so I had to come back. So I went back um, a few days later or a week later or something, and I don't remember the last time I had a cavity out. And so they came out with a needle that was like the size of my arm, and I was like, well, why? I don't understand why is there a needle? Why is there a needle? Why? And I had this complete breakdown in the chair, and so I would never let these things sort of interrupt what I needed to do with my day. But after I got out of there, I just sort of I got into my car and I just sort of broke down, and that was really the only time that I ever felt like I didn't want to be here. Like I wanted it to be over, and yeah, it was just tough. So I thought about it and I thought about it, and I'm just like, I mean, there's two paths that you can take at that point. There's the path that uh, where it is over, and you do that, and that's it, or you ask for help. And I'm not somebody that asks for help. I couldn't be. Why? I'm always able to get through this stuff. It must be me. It must be a me thing. Nobody else feels this way. This isn't something that anyone else has ever felt. So um, I don't know what drove me to do this, but I'm really glad that I went. I made an appointment with my doctor, and so I got in there, and as soon as I start telling him about this stuff, I have a panic attack, and it's really intense. And so what he says to me was, this is once you're letting go of these emotions and you're telling somebody about this stuff, your body tends to react in a cathartic way, and that is, you know, that can result in a panic attack actually happening at that point. So that was really strange. And so we talked through some of the options. I never thought really about going to a therapist. That may have been something that helped me, but I think I was so far gone with the anxiety and the depression at that point that medication was the thing that I needed. And so I went on Zoloft, which, if I could describe how life changing that was, I would. One thing I would say is that I love coffee, and I started working full time instead of going back to school when I was 20, and so I was working in law firms and stuff, and all these law firms had fancy coffee, and so I just became a really big fan of coffee, and I was starting to think about how I would have 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee sometimes, and I couldn't stay awake. I just thought, well, maybe I'm not sleeping enough, or maybe whatever, like I'm not eating right, or whatever it might be. But as soon as I started taking Zoloft, it was like everything changed. I had so much more energy, and my I wasn't really negative anymore. Like it obviously didn't happen overnight. But I should say the having more energy thing did. But it took a while for my neural pathways to switch from being just a grouch to being a happy person. But it was really, really amazing. And I just think about that moment where I could have gone, in either direction, and how important it was for me to tell people about how it helped me, and how going in one direction was so much better than the other. And that really shaped a lot of things about my life that I had been suppressing. I decided to look for a different career. I decided I had sort of a revelation about something as deep as sexuality, and it was just a really freeing thing. And so I was able to start to work through some of these issues that I had growing up, and work through some of the issues that I was having, just encountering on a day-to-day basis. It's To me, I don't think that medication works for everyone, but I think that I am beyond words. I'm beyond words. I don't know how to describe it to anyone, except that when you go from this really, really dark place to um, looking at life and going like, this is the trees and, and birds and cars and whatever, just having an appreciation for where you are, to go from that just one extreme to the other is amazing. And I think that's the main reason, why I'm still here right now. Certainly, I don't want to just like deflect any of the personal growth that I had in order to do that, and subsequently, because there were things like fear of flying, and riding in cars, and stuff that relationships, if you want to get deeper, these are things that I still had to work on, but it gave me the ability to get through those things. And so the last couple years have been the best few years of my life. And so you know, I think right when the pandemic started, everyone it forced everyone to change how they felt about work-life balance, and their priorities in life, and what they wanted out of life. And I had been working in law firms for 8 or 9 years at that point, and not as an attorney or a secretary or anything, and so uh, the pay was great, but the environment wasn't. And so it was just, for a long time, it wasn't what I was looking for. But I felt like the pandemic sort of gave me that push to change that. And so I started looking for different things to do, and that's when this idea popped up to do this podcast, where I thought, well, maybe this is something that I could do. That I don't know, a couple months ago I would have said, well, maybe I could be the next Joe Rogan, but I don't think that that's probably an appropriate thing to say at this moment either. Um, because yeah, but I think this idea just was never it never had a complete purpose. And so moving through the entirety of the pandemic as we are now, which is 3 months into 2022, um, I realized that working from home was something that meant a lot to me, because I spent so many years commuting into the city, and it was just a drain. I would leave at, as a lot of people do, leave at 6 in the morning and come back at 7 o'clock at night, or later, or earlier. It's a lot. So I managed to find a job that I could work from home, and that's been amazing as well. And so one thing that did happen to me, that I've sort of been struggling with for the last couple of months, is in October of 2021. I I should backtrack. About a month earlier, so September, I had noticed some moles on my back that, you can't always see your back, and so I might go like a year or something without looking, or I had in the past, and I might go, ooh, that kind of looks weird. But then it's like it's still that fear of going, and I think that's something that you have to overcome as well. But so I'd seen a couple moles, and I had also been watching one on my arm that started off as a small little black dot, and then I noticed it grew like a little border around it. So I made an appointment, and I went in, and they looked at the ones on my back, and full disclosure, it's definitely embarrassing to have to go to the dermatologist. You have to get naked in front of someone that, well, you'll eventually know them, but you don't know them yet. And so, yeah, I mean, they looked at every mole, and so they took a couple off, and they took the one on my arm off because I mentioned it had been growing. And I didn't think too much of it because I had had moles removed before, and I know that I'm fair skinned and I've had a lot of pretty bad sunburns. So, yeah, I didn't think too much of it. But a couple weeks later, I got a call that the one on my arm was melanoma in situ, which melanoma is the deadliest form of skin cancer, but in situ is stage 0, which means that the cancer cells haven't grown past the outer layer of the skin. So, in other words, it was caught as early as it could have been caught. And so, I think you take this information in, and for me, my experience, they told me this over the phone. So, I don't know how, I don't know if that has to do with COVID or not, but, I there were a lot of questions that I had, and I don't feel like I got the answers that I wanted. So, it took me a little bit to absorb. And so then I set off, of course, on the internet, and that it's like another WebMD rabbit hole. You just sort of go down and you read all these things. And so I got a little freaked out. But I was sort of assured by them that, hey, this is when we took it off, we got as much of it off, like we got all of it, I'm pretty sure. So you really don't have anything to worry about in that spot. You'll just have to come, every couple months and get your skin checked just to make sure. And so then I met with the surgeon over the phone, and she talked to me about the surgery, because it doesn't matter how deep your skin cancer is, and the severity of it depends on how deep it goes. It doesn't matter. They have to do what they call a wide local excision, which basically takes what is essentially the size of a quarter all the way around the area of the mole, and they take out all the skin. And so we talked about that, and that was kind of scary, but at the same time, they waited about 2 months. Like, they said, "Oh, if you can wait a little while, to get this surgery, then that would be great, because obviously there are priority patients, and this was only a stage 0." So I kind of tried to forget about it for a bit, but then as the surgery approached, I was really starting to get nervous, and I spent a lot of time searching about melanoma and reading stories and this and that, and it just sort of, there were a couple weeks there where I was sort of paralyzed in fear. And so I had the surgery, and everything went fine. They got everything out. There weren't any remaining cancer cells in there. So, really happy about that. I will have to continue to go to the dermatologist every 6 months for the rest of my life. And hopefully, knock on wood somewhere, that I don't have another one, or if I do, it's caught as early as this one. But so probably about like 2 weeks after the surgery. So I had the surgery in January of 2022. And a couple of weeks after that, I had just a series of really bad dreams. And I found myself like sort of unable to get out of bed. And I was just like still down this rabbit hole. And it was really starting to take control of my life. And so one of the papers that they gave me when they discharged me was it was a pamphlet for the American Cancer Association, and I noticed on the back that they had a hotline and everything. So opening up, which might sound might be the antithesis of what I've just been talking about for the last 30 minutes, but opening up is not necessarily easy for me. So I sort of sat on it for a couple days, and then I couldn't take the mental angst anymore. So I picked up the phone and I called, and I talked to someone who was really super nice. And, he gave me a bunch of resources, local resources, people that I could reach out to. I could always call them back again and just talk through some stuff. But, after that phone call, it lasted about 45 minutes. And, we just went through a whole bunch of stuff. And after that call, I felt so much better. I mean, I obviously, the problem doesn't go away, but talking felt so much better. And that's when the idea for doing this clicked. It's like, if I, yes, this is beneficial for me, but if I can work through my emotions while also potentially sharing the stories of others, and, giving them a platform where they can talk and they can work through their things, and, just a really sort of safe space for that, that I think is important to me. And, whether one or two or zero people watch this, then it will be an exercise in my own mental health improvement. But that's sort of the impetus behind doing this. And, I think, um, I think we live really in a world where people don't want to talk about their problems, and people just sort of put their heads down and get on with their day. And, some people are really good at managing that, and some aren't. And for me, this is my opportunity to give back, because I feel like I've had this sort of revelation where, and I will admit, part of me does feel a bit like, why did I why was mine only stage 0, and why is someone else's stage 4? Why is it easier for me and not for them? These are things that I have, and thoughts that I have, and guilt. Um, but in feeling that, I also looked at my own mortality sort of in the face, in a way, more than I ever had before. It's certainly the most serious thing that ever happened to me health wise. And, I've broken plenty of bones, and I've injured myself plenty. So, I've put my body through the ringer, but this one took me. Um, and, so um, I think the outlook that I have has to be positive. It can't live in that negative space any longer, because I can't live the rest of my life negative. I can't live the rest of my life hating every moment. I can't live without appreciating where I am and what comes next. I want to be happy, and at the same time, I also want to give back and hopefully help other people. Right after, about 6 months after I got on medication, a friend of mine and a friend of some of the people that I've known online for a long time committed suicide. And that was a really tough one for me, because we had roomed together at a mutual friend's wedding. And, it was like 4 days. And when you room with someone like that, you get to know them. And um, I just regret, not having the opportunity to understand what he was going through, and, to talk with him about that, and then to share what helped me. And so it's been a long road here, but I think this is the intent for me. And so I would love to have on, some of my friends, or people I don't even know, just to come on and talk. And, I don't know, maybe I do one episode and this is it. And it's just me sitting here talking to myself, or maybe I do a bunch. But that's the goal. And so I don't want to say much more than that, but hopefully anyone that made it this far comes back for the next one, and hopefully, beginnings, the beginning of something, and transitional material and the end of something are not my strong suit. I can sit here and talk for 35 minutes, and the time will go by like that. But as soon as I try to end something, it gets really awkward. So, in the words of Fraser Crane, I'm just going to say, have a good night and good mental health.